Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of the big stories around the world relevant to the Sikh community. And as we've covered a lot of stories recently about some very negative events milling around the press and the recent explosion in hate crimes, well, today I'm instead going to look at something a little bit more positive, hopefully, and acknowledge the anniversary a few days ago of one of the most heroic days in Sikh military history. We'll take a look at just what I'm talking about later in the show to remind us all just how strong and powerful the backbone of the Sikh community is. And those who ever think to take the community on, and they know who they are, better take note. Well, all this and more on today's show. But joining me, as always, is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our amazing viewers out there. Once again, your comments have filled up the boxes, whether it's on Substack or here on YouTube, and we appreciate every single one of them. Keep them flowing, folks. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed, and James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community. And at the end of the show, do stay tuned where we'll take a look at loads of your great comments that have been pouring in. So thank you as always for those. Right, James, let's get underway. Lots to get through this morning. What are you going to start us off today?
Well, as we all know, the Sikh community is at a nexus of innovation, advocacy, and resilience, and we are going to take a quick peek at some of the stories that bring that to light and to the information of our viewers. And it's amazing how much has changed and how much some things have stayed the same. But here in September 2025, the Sikh community globally has found itself in a defining moment. This is navigating a period of unprecedented dynamism characterized by powerful and demanding duality. On one hand, it's experiencing a remarkable renaissance of economic innovation, cultural expression, and intellectual foresight that is very much looking towards the future, but also particularly within its historic heartland of Punjab. This surge of creativity and enterprise is laying the groundwork for a prosperous and self-determined future. Yes, we're talking about Khalistan, of course. And on the other hand, the community, especially in the diaspora, is confronting acute and sophisticated security threats that challenge its fundamental rights to free expression and political advocacy. Now, the reality has necessitated a coordinated and robust global defense in its civil liberties, transforming community organizations into highly effective legal and political forces. Now, the report is going to look at a strategic analysis of complex landscape, examining 5 core interconnected narratives that define the Sikh experience of late 2025. These are not desperate stories, but rather facets of a single overarching reality of a community that is simultaneously building its future while actively defending its present. We're going to take a peek at these, but I will do so in oversight, as we normally do, and take a look at certain areas. And then if you want to read the articles in full depth and get the full picture, then of course you can check them out on our Substack. They are now automatically scheduled to be posted on Substack automatically at 4 a.m. every morning Pacific Standard Time here in Vancouver. So that will make it easier for you to know when to expect them. Now, let's take a look first at the new economic frontier, and that is forging prosperity in Punjab's tech sector. And that is something that Angus and I have spoken about at great lengths when it comes to technology and the opportunities, not just in general tech, but also ag tech and AI when it comes to the future prosperity and economy of the Punjab region, and of course in perpetuity or after that, when Khalistan is formed, it will be a basis of the economic driver of not only the region, but they will be able to export a lot of that tech to the outside world as part of trade agreements in the new ecosystem of technology and shared resources. Now, of course, the coordinated multi-layered strategy is rapidly transforming Punjab already into a significant technology and entrepreneurship hub. The development is not a matter of chance, but the result of deliberate and synergistic efforts by state government, private enterprise, and academic institutions to reverse historical economic stagnation in the region and to cultivate a self-sustaining ecosystem for future generations. We also have to keep in mind that as this progresses, it'll be important to keep all of this technology and the brain power, which is the workers and the creators, within the Punjab region so that they are not taken by New Delhi and those IP intellectual properties are not maintained by India, but instead they transfer with Punjab to Khalistan when that time comes. So again, the ownership is very essential, which is one of the reasons that many international tech companies have concerns about going into India to develop their programming. They instead bring a lot of Indian workers, whether it's Sikhs or Hindus or others, to the US, to the UK, to Canada, to build these apps, to build the intellectual property, because India as a country and as the state wants to have some ownership and control of intellectual property, whether it is government defined and government built, or even if it's private enterprise. So again, those are some of the challenges that are going to be faced within the Punjab region to make sure that that remains in the hands of the creators and of the Punjab region. Now, of course, in 2025 here, this new economic frontier is defined by ambitious grassroots initiatives, robust policy support, and a clear vision to reclaim the region's legacy of prosperity through innovation. Another point that may actually be helping is the current trade fight between India and the United States, as more and more of the tech companies and the investment from outside of the US and international circles is looking for other areas to diversify their investments and their bets on future technology. I think that Punjab has a great opportunity here to invite and attract a lot of international investment, whether that is sovereignty funds or private investment and seed investment funds that are there for the taking, so to speak. Now, of course, the Campus Tank initiative is a part of the think tank and at the forefront of the movement. And that's the launch of what they do refer to as the Campus Tank. And that's a nationwide initiative by the professional networking and jobs platform, APNA. And they are designed to ignite the entrepreneurial spirit among India's youth. And this is huge because we've done stories again, Angus and I, on the future of youth in the Punjab region and in India overall, and their lack of vision when it comes to seeing a future by remaining in the region and what opportunities await them. This gives them a bit more of a future, a bit more of a vision, and being able to visualize themselves in these positions of success is what's going to inspire them to do so. And again, this is a big turning point and big opportunity. Now, with the substantial $6 million funding pool, the program aims to provide critical capital, mentorship, incubation, and training to aspiring founders under the age of 30. So Angus and I are both ruled out of that, and, many times over almost. But as that says, it is, again, just a huge jump for the youth, and they've already had interest from over 20,000 registrants since its announcement, and that is just an untapped reservoir of entrepreneurial talent. So if, you want to read more about that, by all means, there's a lot of different ways. Now, in terms of the actual startup policy, the private initiatives like Campus Tank provide the spark. Now, the Punjab Startup Policy 2025 provides the essential long-term fuel. What is that? Well, operating under the framework of Startup Punjab, the ecosystem version 2.0, the comprehensive policy is actually being positioned as a national blueprint on how state governments can effectively empower entrepreneurship. Its design demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of the startup life cycle, systematically addressing key bottlenecks from initial capital to operational costs and market access that typically stifle innovation. And again, we're going to talk about one of the challenges on the other side. And that, again, is going to be if Punjab is able to control and regulate all of these initiatives and to be able to work with the entrepreneurs and the investors as a group without the intervention from New Delhi trying to get their fingers and basically their wallets in there to try to take away and recoup some of the profits that we are sure to see come back from these programs. So again, we need to make sure that when we look at it, that Punjab remains the controlling figure, unlike rivers and such, where the federal government has put their fingers in and caused nothing but mayhem and absurdity. This again will be a power machine for the future of Punjab and Khalistan. And again, you can look at some of the different subsidies and incentives that are available. Again, this will be on the Substack, but in the interest of time, I don't want to take too much time to look at each one because there's just so much to cover there, and it is a beautiful thing to see growth. Now, the art of truth. Let's take a look at something else, and that is cultural expression as resistance and renewal. The Sikh art scene in 2025 is dynamic and increasingly vital arena. And again, this includes not only traditional arts, but also the incorporation of new arts to weave together the historical and the futuristic transcension of the different arts that are there. And of course, we know that they are characterized by a powerful evolution in which the cultural expression is being leveraged. And that is being done as a potent tool for political truth telling. The younger crowds and the younger citizenship is using it to get their truth and their stories out there, but also to recognize the historical reckoning, the community renewal. This movement is running parallel to and is enriched by more traditional efforts of heritage celebration and preservation. Again, social media, the internet, the new technology, AI, all of these things can be a huge factor in championing this goal if used correctly and responsibly with ethics and respect for the past. So again, you've got to make sure that you bring that balance. Now, of course, the result is a multifaceted cultural landscape where art serves not only to remember the past, but also to actively shape the future. And, of course, the present day to represent that. But the clear bifurcation of the artistic purpose is emerging. One stream is dedicated to the meticulous preservation of historical legacy, while the second, more confrontational stream is focused on using contemporary art to bear witness to recent trauma and ongoing struggles. So again, it is really seeing a reemergence of art in the value of bringing the whole culture forward and to a new audience, I might add, because art transcends borders, art transcends cultures, art transcends political agendas, and that is the beauty of art, is that we've seen people take a love and a study and just an appreciation of art in all of its forms from around the globe, even from other cultures. So I think that there is a huge opportunity here. Now, of course, in Partafash, the art is a testimony and a confrontation at the same time. Now, at the heart of the confrontational stream is the landmark art exhibition that was called Partafash, and a title that translates from Punjabi as "to reveal the truth." And again, this exhibition really represents a significant departure from historically focused Sikh art shows, and its explicit purpose is to address the hidden stories and trauma of recent historical tragedies, particularly in the experience of Sikhs living past and post 9/11 in America and the continuing oppression faced by minorities in India. Again, different topics that we talk about on the show all the time are getting a new avenue of expression and a new avenue of attention, which is good news. Now, they also are speaking out publicly about a fear of being targeted by the Indian government even today. And that's directly linking the artistic expression to the political realities of the surveillance and repression that are growing concerns for the diaspora, not just in India, but anywhere in the world. And that can take form in many areas of arts, whether that is painting and sketch, through to animation and movie production, or even music and the spoken word and poetry. So again, it really comes together to raise the awareness there in all of the different forms of art. Now, they also state that this brings together 8 contemporary Sikh artists who are employing a diverse range of mediums. Again, fabric sculpture, video installations, augmented reality, which is one that we haven't really touched on. Instead, we talk a lot about artificial intelligence, but again, augmented reality is something that is making huge inroads when it comes to the interactivity with people of all different nations. Some of the artists that are featured in this particular installation are Ravina Tour, Sandeep Morrison, Babneet Laksir, and Navpreet Singh, and they are unified in their mission to paint a vision of their lives and their struggles. And this is creating a powerful collective memory that can be shared through this testimony. Now, the exhibition is described as a plea to be heard and a demand for Sikh history to be written to mainstream textbooks. Again, we talk about the need to make sure that the truth is out there and that it's remembered not only by the Sikhs that are in India, but also around the world and by the non-Sikh communities. And this, again, is to ensure that they challenge the propaganda and the historical erasure that you see from groups such as the RSS, the Hindutva, and others that want to erase the history and the rich culture that has been and will continue to be, because the Sikhs will not lay down and let it go. Now, again, there is much more to that, but I don't want to, again, take up all of our time on the one issue tonight because there are so many others. Now, of course, we know that this month has also been the most critical security threat facing the Sikh diaspora in terms of transnational repression. A coordinated campaign of surveillance and intimidation and violence orchestrated by foreign state actors against activists, journalists, community leaders on sovereign Western soil, the Sikhs for Justice campaign, and so much more. Now, the Sikh community is responding to that, and they've evolved in that response from raising initial awareness to achieving a significant concrete legislation and legal victories in North America. We're seeing more and more of these issues being raised in the Congress, in the US Capitol. We're seeing it raised in Parliament in the UK. We're seeing it raised in Parliament in Canada, as well as in Australia, New Zealand, and we can go on and on. But the real truth of it is that it is through all of the hardships and the challenges and the threats that Sikhs have faced in the past that has really enshrined what they've done to fight and to never give up. And their persistence has brought them to the point where they are making a lot of successes out of that struggle. Now, of course, they are successfully reframing the issue from a niche diaspora problem into a fundamental threat to the national security and democratic values of their host nations. And I hate the term host nations. They are a part of their nations. They are a part of Canada. They are a part of, so we'll, use it for now. But again, I just wanted to just make that clear. But again, it's forcing a difficult reckoning within Western governments about their geopolitical alliances. Once again, with the trade issues in India that are going on between Modi and Trump right now, there is a prime opportunity for the U.S. government to bring up the human rights atrocities and human rights crimes that are taking place to this day in India. No matter how much certain people want us to bury our head in the sand and pretend it's not going on, it is. Now, of course, we also know that, different plots of political assassinations, and in the U.S. that is continuing to be investigated on several new threats and new fronts. in Canada, we are seeing more violence, whether it's gun violence and extortion attempts. This is growing. There is increased law enforcement activity. There is a much more of a movement across the country to label the Bishnoi gang as a terror group. But again, it is still a very serious and very active threat to the communities here in Canada as well as elsewhere. Now, we could look at the State Senate Bill 509. We can look at the different senators and Congress people who are trying to pass anti-caste system legislation, that are trying to make registration mandatory for any foreign agents that are active or in official payroll from their home countries while in the host nations of the diplomats or otherwise. So again, this is in light of many different nations, including India and China, that have been caught with their pants down, so to speak, and China with police stations, foreign police stations actively working in Canada, as well as we are well informed on India's transnational repression and foreign interference here in Canada. So again, we've got a lot of other stories here, Angus, but I will put those up on our Substack to kind of keep us within our timeline tonight, because we have a habit of going way over, and of course that is important to try to get us as we move to our live shows, ladies and gentlemen. We want to try to keep it running on time. So again, we hope that you enjoy that, and check out their Substack. Leave your comments by all means. But most of all, let's hand it back to Angus for his thoughts and his stories tonight.
Indeed, yes, thanks, James. And yeah, some interesting, some important topics there. First of all, we have to acknowledge the passing of SB 509. Well done to the community in California. That's a huge just indictment of the efforts of grassroots lobbying from the community in California. This is what you can do as a community. You can actually push through basically what is in effect a nationally impactful bill, because this will have an impact right across the United States and actually indirectly through North America. It is sending such a powerful message out. Firstly, the diaspora, this is the power of the diaspora and what they can achieve at a national political level. But secondly, it's saying, look, we're not going to put up with this anymore. We're not going to put up with transnational repression. We will hold India to account. And it proves to the whole United Nations, well, it does indirectly, but certainly the United States and indeed the Western democratic world, that, the Sikh community will not lay down. It will not let this pass, and you're not going to get away with it, India. And more importantly, politicians are listening. Politicians are starting to understand the truth about India. And of course, they are now enacting legislation that proves that very point. So this is one prime example to the rest of the diaspora, certainly in the Western democratic world. This is what we can achieve. Keep lobbying. It doesn't matter if you think you're just one individual. You're not. You're part of a community that once it gets mobilized, it can have literally a national impact on legislation. We've seen that increasingly so. So well done to those guys in California for that effort at getting SB 5093. Now, the other story I just want to quickly just touch on was the Punjab and this industrial issue of the Punjab. Now, there are all these wonderful initiatives, and of course we often talk about how entrepreneurial, just by genetic nature, the Sikh community are. Wherever they go in the world, they build business, they build, create, and it's really to the credit of the community and just how much success they've achieved, both in India and of course outside India. But of course, this is in India. It's up against an immutable force that is trying its damnedest to prevent the success of the Sikh community. Of course, I'm talking about the Indian establishment, the Brahmins, the RSS, etc. They do not want Sikhs to succeed, so they're throwing every obstacle they can in the way. Now, notice that all these initiatives, almost bar none, to create in the Punjab, to build, to innovate, they're all privately led. There's very, very little state effort, state initiatives to try and grow industry. It's quite the opposite. Almost all the state initiatives are designed from a national status, from an Indian national status, not to grow Punjab industry. They focus on Gujarat, unsurprisingly, because we know where Modi and others are from. But certainly other states seem to benefit, and primarily the cow belt, that central belt of India. They're the states that benefit, and yet it is the commercial generative states, including the Punjab and certainly some of the southern states that generate so much wealth and business, all that money gets poured back into Delhi. Where does it go? It gets redistributed, not back to those areas, but to the let's call it the favoured political areas of the BJP and the RSS, etc. So yeah, it's very noticeable that all these initiatives, the big initiatives, the ones that really will have an impact, have come from the private sector. Surprise, surprise. And Modi himself is very isolationist. We've talked about this in the past. Modi, almost by policy, does not want FDI, foreign direct investment. He sees it as somehow evil. He doesn't want the West investing in India. He wants India to grow itself. Now, that in itself is laudable if you've got the ability to grow your own economy. It will get there eventually, organically, but it's slow. To really, if India wants to be a superpower quickly, it needs FDI. It needs foreign direct investment. It needs that capital input to build the infrastructure, to build the industry that can then grow at that pace to rival China. But Modi is against that, and that actually is to India's detriment, and that is a real problem for India and indirectly for the West. But ultimately, for the Sikh community, yeah, it's interesting. They are up against this massive, powerful force of the Indian state who are trying their damnedest. And some of my podcasts, we've analysed, we've seen the evidence of how much they are trying to denude, to destroy, to undermine the industry of the Punjab. So yeah, very interesting that. Final comment about the arts. Yeah, arts, very, very powerful area. We often dismiss the arts as something almost peripheral in life. The arts are really important. Art is a peaceful power. Art is deeply powerful. This is why fascists burn books, in metaphorical terms. They understand the power of art. They understand how people can be moved by art. Art includes, obviously, the media, television, films, etc. It includes books, news articles, whatever. But the media generally is deeply powerful. It persuades you, it manipulates you peacefully. That's the key word here. It's peaceful, it's subtle, it's subliminal, but it's powerful. And that's why, as I say, in authoritarian states and fascism, etc., one of the first areas they clamp down on are the arts. That's why they burn books, why the Nazis burnt books, because they fear the power of media. And that's where the Sikh community particularly can really excel and really exert a peaceful, subtle but powerful manipulation on the world, certainly the local community, but certainly the world. And that's why we always encourage those in the community, get out there, make films, set up YouTube channels, all these sorts of things, set up news outlets, because they can't stamp down on everybody. If there's all of us doing it, the more the truth gets out, the more powerful the whole movement becomes. So that's my message, James, is to the community. Get out there, create, be creative, because it's peaceful power and it works.
And look at the bright side, Angus. The RSS, the Hindutva, they're all busy stomping us down, so they don't have time to go after your YouTube channel if you start one. So
exactly. Hopefully they can't shut us all up. So as I said,
shadow banning us. You're good out there if you start a new one.
Indeed, absolutely.
But no, some great points there, Angus.
Great stuff. Okay, right. Time marches on. Let me move on to my first story. And talking about arts, here's a comic. Now this comic was from the 1960s. Here in the UK, it's called The Hornet. I think even as a kid, I seem to remember The Hornet. And one of the stories featured in this particular issue, this has done the rounds, the viral rounds on social media over recent days. September the 12th was a hugely important anniversary date for Sikh military history. A really powerful story, this. And I love, as I say, in the intro, I said, there's so much negativity flying around social media at the moment. I'm horrified by some of the things I've been reading. I thought, you know what we need is to recognise something a little bit more positive. And what is more positive than reminding ourselves of the power, the sheer heroism that it just forms this backbone of Sikh military history. Of course, the Sikhs are known for their martial arts, their skills in the military, etc. And ultimately, of course, September the 12th, the anniversary date was the 12th of September 1897. Let me give you a quick overview of what this is about. Now, this image this children's comic. This comic, quite often, certainly when I was a kid, these comics, particularly aimed at boys, obviously, always like to celebrate great military achievements in the past. Now, one of these, of course, was this battle, the Battle of Saraghari, and hopefully a lot of our audience might be aware of this, but you might not well be aware of this. It was a last stand battle fought before the Tirah campaign between the British Indian Empire and the Afghan tribesmen. So, of course, this is when Sikhs served in the British Army post-Sikh Empire. So on this date in 1897, an estimated 12 to 24,000 Orakzayan Afridi tribesmen were seen around Saraghari, cutting off Fort Gulistan from Fort Lockhart. Now, just to give you, I'm going to give you a brief map to try and piece these elements together so you can visualise it. I wonder if we can zoom in here. There we go. So make it a bit easier for you to see. So, in summary, what the story was about, the Afghans basically attacked this outpost of Saraghari, where thousands of them swarmed and surrounded the fort, preparing to assault it. Now, in the fort were 21 Sikh soldiers, led by a guy called Havildar Ishar Singh. All the soldiers were Sikhs, 21 of them. They refused to surrender and they were wiped out to the last man. The post was actually recaptured a couple of days later by another British Indian contingent. All of the 21 soldiers involved in the battle were posthumously awarded the Indian Order of Merit, which is the highest gallantry award at the time that any Indian soldier could be awarded. And the Indian Army's 4th Battalion of the Sikh Regiment commemorate this battle every year on the anniversary date, the 12th of September, which is forever known as Saraghari Day. So let me give you a bit of the background. On the 20th of April, 1894, the 36th Regiment, there you go, there's a fantastic picture of some of these guys. So 20th of April 1894, the 36th Sikh Regiment was formed in the British Indian Army. It was created under the command of Colonel J. Cook, and it was entirely composed of Jat Sikhs. In August 1897, this is just a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks before the battle, 5 companies of the 36th Sikhs under Lieutenant Colonel John Horton were sent to the northwest frontier of British India. That's modern-day Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And they were stationed at the Samana Hills, Kurag Sanga, Sartopdar, and here at the fort at Saraghari. Now, the British had partially succeeded in getting control of this whole area. It's very volatile. There's an awful lot of skirmishing going on. But tribal Pashtuns, the locals, were just continuing forevermore just to harry and attack the British from time to time. It was just what they did over and over, day after day, these little skirmishes. And as a result, a series of forts were built along this sort of area. And they were originally built by Ranjit Singh, of course, of the Sikh Empire, the ruler of the Sikh Empire at the time. So the British Army then took control of these forts, these old Ranjit Singh forts, and repurposed them for defending the British Army. Now, let's go back to the map. This is actually from Google Maps, and you can start to piece bits and pieces together, just so I can give you a lay of the land. Now, 2 of the forts were Fort Lockhart, that's on the Samana Ridge of the Hindu Kush Mountains, and Fort Gulistan, situated a few miles apart. And if I zoom in, hopefully you can see my mouse there, that's Fort Lockhart. That is Fort Gulistan, and in the middle is Saraghari, just there. So you can start to see, and you start to see the terrain that we're operating in. It's very mountainous terrain in this sort of deep valley. And Saraghari is actually up on a little peak in the middle of this valley. So again, it gives you can picture the scene. Very, very hostile terrain. Now, the battle itself, the details of the battle are actually considered to be fairly accurate, because one of the guys in the fort, Sepoy Gurmukh Singh, signalled events to Fort Lockhart, just up the way from Saraghari up to Fort Lockhart, by heliograph as they occurred. Now, if I remember correctly, a heliograph is one of those light flashing things. It's like a mirror, basically. And what it does, it flashes. They can signal using this mirror and the sun to send signals using, well, I guess it was Morse code or equivalents. Right, so the battle itself. Around 9 a.m. of that day, 12th September, approximately 6,000 to 10,000 Afghans reached the signalling post at Saraghari. Sepoy Gurmukh Singh signalled to Colonel Horton. Colonel Horton was over in Fort Lockhart, that they were now coming under attack. Don't forget, there are only 21 guys in this tiny little fort, this tiny little outpost, basically. and suddenly they're facing 6,000 to 10,000 Afghans. Now you picture 21 people around you, 21 people in a room, let's say. And then you imagine 10,000 people marching towards you. That'll give you even just a sense of what these guys must have been feeling. Now, Sepoy Gurmukh Singh signalled to Colonel Horton in Fort Lockhart that they were now coming under attack. Now, Colonel Horton came back and said, look, we cannot send immediate help to you. We're not in a position to be able to send help, but hold out for as long as you can. So the soldiers then decided, OK, we will fight to the last man to prevent the enemy from reaching the fort. So essentially, they were this sort of line of defence before Fort Lockhart. So let me show up this is another depiction. And again, from this picture, you can start to see that the terrain, this mountainous terrain, this is a depiction created by an artist at the time. And there at the top, Saraghari, at the top of that peak, that small peak there, coming under siege, and 10,000 of them. So Sepoy Bhagwan Singh was the first soldier to be killed. Naik Lal Singh was seriously wounded. And again, don't forget, we know this information because it's been heliographed up to Fort Lockhart by this Sikh soldier. Now, Naik Lal Singh and Sepoy Jiwa Singh reportedly carried the body of Bhagwan Singh back to the inner layer of the post, but then the Afghans broke a portion of the wall on the picket. The picket is one of the, in simple terms, one of the outer lines. Horton signalled that he estimated that there were between 10 and 14,000 Pashtuns attacking Saraghari. Don't forget, only 21 of them facing up to 14,000. The leaders of the Pashtun forces reportedly made promises to the soldiers to try and entice them to surrender. So they obviously said, look, come out, surrender, you'll be all right. But what do these guys say? No way, never surrender. Of course, these are Sikhs, don't forget. Reportedly, 2 determined attempts were made to rush open the gate, but they were unsuccessful. Finally, the wall was breached, and thereafter some of the fiercest hand-to-hand fighting occurred. Havildar Ishar Singh ordered his men to fall back into the inner layer, whilst he remained to cover their retreat. And after the inner layer was breached, all but one of the defending soldiers were killed, along with many of the Pashtuns. Now, Sepoy Gurmukh Singh, he was the guy who communicated the battle to Colonel Horton as the signalman, was the last surviving defender. His final message was to ask for permission to pick up his rifle. Upon receiving permission, he packed up the heliograph, held the door of his signalling shed. He is stated to have killed 40 Afghans, and then the Pashtuns were forced to set fire to the post to kill him. They basically couldn't get at him. As he was dying, Singh is said to have yelled repeatedly, of course, Bole Sonihal, Sat Sri Akal. So, of course, we all know what that means. So, Bole Sonihal, and again, you can picture the scene. The final guy, the final stand. I mean, it brings goosebumps out, these guys. 21 of them facing up to 14,000 tribesmen. The final guy, the signaller, basically sends his last message. Please, can I have permission? I mean, again, what a soldier. He wants permission from his senior officer. Can I please pick up my rifle to fight to the last? Of course, that's granted. Puts down his heliograph, and he literally fights to the last man, to the end. I mean, it's just, again, it brings goosebumps, that the heroism that was involved in this. So, what happened afterwards? Well, the Pashtuns apparently admitted later that they'd lost at least 180 killed. So you're looking at over you can do the maths. I mean, it's incredible. Every Sikh soldier killed at least 20 Pashtuns. I mean, again, you can imagine a lot of this was in hand-to-hand fighting. Again, so you can picture the scene. You can see the devastation from the ruins here, and you can start to see that wall there with those little the doorways and the windows. This is what they had to defend. Extremely hard to defend. You imagine there's 20 or 14,000 tribesmen coming at you, and you're hiding behind these walls, just this line of walls. Extraordinarily difficult to defend, and yet they did. And the 21 Sikh non-commissioned officers, NCOs, that means they're the NCOs are like second lieutenants, lieutenants, sergeants, and then the rest are just normal private soldiers, sepoys as they were known. So the 21 NCOs who died in the battle were from the Marjar region of Punjab. They were posthumously awarded the Indian Order of Merit, at that time the highest gallantry award which an Indian soldier could receive. The corresponding gallantry award was the Victoria Cross. It's certainly in the British Army, that is the highest award. But the VC, if I'm correct in saying, can only be awarded to British officers. So ordinary men and NCOs like these guys couldn't be awarded the VC. Ultimately, obviously, they should have been, but they were awarded this highest gallantry award that they were able to be awarded. The equivalent today, apparently, I think in the Indian Army is the Paramveer Chakra, which is usually awarded by the President of India. Now, of course, the British Army and the British nation were deeply grateful and deeply respectful to these 21 men who gave their lives in such a heroic fashion. As a result, various commemorations, and then there are all sorts of memorials and things all around to commemorate them. But two of the key ones, the Saraghari Memorial at Firozpur was built. That's this one here, you can see here. And but they built two Saraghari Gurdwaras, as they were called. One was actually built in Amritsar, and actually very close to the main entrance of the Golden Temple itself. And then this one here in Firozpur cantonment in the district that most of the men hail from. So again, the British, as an understandably respectful display of honour for these guys, they built these Gurdwaras to say, wow, you deservedly hold a place of honour in British history. And I'm just flagging up here. This is the Roll of Honour. These are the 21 Sikh soldiers of Saraghari. And we certainly have to take our hats off to these guys. I mean, certainly I've served in the British Army. And we always take huge pride in soldiers who came before us. And particularly guys like this, serving in the British Army. These are Sikhs from the Punjab who gave their lives in the most heroic fashion. They didn't surrender. They stood literally to the last man. And as I said in the intro, this is so typical of the Sikh community. This is why the Sikh community are held in such high regard, certainly by the British and certainly the British Army, right. But certainly I think even internationally, and why they were used as mercenaries even centuries ago, because fighting, martial arts, this military skill backed up with just a huge backbone of iron. This is why Sikhs make such great soldiers and why they're so good at sport, and why sport is, these days in the 21st century, sport is so important, because again, the roots of that, of course, is back in their hugely military proud history. And this is one of many battles, of course, that form that hugely powerful heritage, military heritage of the Sikh community. But certainly I think Saraghari Day, I mean, 12th of September, it is so nice to report on such a powerful story. But as I said in the intro, that the message to the enemies of the Sikhs, and they know who they are, whether it's the Indian state or others, just remember who you're up against. Remember, these people never surrender. They don't just never forget. They never surrender. They are deeply powerful, and they will never go away. And this is why we know that Khalistan is coming, James, because they will never let it lie, and they will fight to the last man, literally, until they get Khalistan.
Absolutely, Angus, and that's something that you have to have nothing but utmost respect for, not only in the modern day, but also throughout history, and how the Sikhs have played such a pivotal role and instrumental role in the leadership of military, whether it's Canadian military, U.S. military, U.K. military, Indian military, doesn't matter. You can go back to the Sikh Empire. Pride and the dedication of these individuals, and it is never forgotten. When you combine that also, as you brought up, the link between that and the current day with going into sport even, it's about pushing themselves to the limits to challenge what the perception is of that limit and pass it through, to not to show off to others, but to challenge themselves internally and physically. And that is a sense of pride that they derive that from. So again, it is such an amazing story of perseverance, dedication, and of course, out and outright skill. I mean, the battle skills and the fighting and the defense, I mean, is just unheard of. Well, we seem to be having a technical issue here with the new studio. It's all getting ironed out before we go live, and this is why we're doing it, to make sure that we can interact better with you, the viewer. So again, we seem to have lost Angus there for a moment, but again, make sure that if you have comments that you would like to share with us on the show, you can leave your comments here in the comment sections, or you can email directly to message@satledgetv.com. Make sure that you take time to interact with us, because we appreciate every single one of your messages. This has been another episode of Perspectives, and we will be back again tomorrow, so make sure that you set your timer. Other than that, folks, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget that you can be a part of the conversation on our Substack channel as well. And that's savagetv.substack.com. Check it out. And we will look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Have a great day, folks.